Joining me now to discuss the latest U.S. airstrikes is Hudson Institute senior fellow Rebeccah Heinrichs. Rebeccah, welcome.
Thank you.
So the Houthis are promising a response after the latest U.S.-Britain airstrikes. Is the deterrence working?
No, it's not. Actually, the goal should be to compel Iran to stop funding its proxy attacks against the United States. So it's not so much, deterrence has failed. Now we're trying to exercise compellence to cause the Iranians to understand that the United States is not going to tolerate Iran attacking the United States via proxies. And so really these attacks, Senator Graham was exactly right. The Biden administration telegraphed through the media when these counterstrikes were going to happen, days in advance, and then also the general locations. And so it gave the Iranians plenty of opportunity to get their high-level proxies out. There are significant IRGC leaders who have been training and equipping these proxies out of those areas, and any kind of mobile system that's of highest value to the Iran regime to remove it. So I saw your Fox News' Lucas Tomlinson report that more bombs have been dropped than people killed in these counterstrikes. And so it has not had the effect. I don't expect it to have the effect of getting Iran to stand down.
What about the point from Senator Lindsey Graham about really hitting them where it hurts?
Well, you have to. So, I don't mean to suggest that concerns about escalation are unfounded. There's always a chance that the enemy is going to escalate. But we know that Iran does not want to go against the United States directly because they haven't so far. They're using proxies. And so what the United States should seek to do is cause Iran to fear, to complicate their calculations. So you do have to actually go after Iran itself, after things that the Iran regime values, rather than allaying their fears and giving them time to remove those things of highest value out of the way of U.S. bombs.
We've had clashes with the Iranian regime going back to Reagan in the mid-'80s. So they can prevent an escalation, right? I mean, they know how to hit but not escalate into full-blown war.
That's exactly right. We have a great example in 1988, Operation Praying Mantis, where Ronald Reagan had the U.S. Navy respond by sinking the Iranian Navy, and the Iranians did not come back hard. We saw President Trump authorize, of course, the Soleimani strike, the IRGC commander in Iraq. The reason that was so important, not just because Soleimani himself was of enormous importance, so he was to the regime, but it caused the Iranians to wonder what else we would do next, complicated their calculations, made them fear what else the United States would do. That's the kind of take the United States should do now.
What about hearing from the commander-in-chief? It seems to me we're launching airstrikes. Wouldn't it be some value to telling the country what we're doing and also telling the world what the United States of America is doing?
Yeah, we need to hear from the commander-in-chief. We have merchant marines in great danger, trying to keep cargo and commercial shipping safe in the Red Sea, a major global shipping lane that's important for the United States and for Europe and Asia. We have U.S. forces clearly at great risk in the region. We have families now who are grieving and reeling from the loss of these three warriors at the hands of the Iran regime and their proxies. So the commander-in-chief owes it to the American people and to these families in particular, and to our allies, what his plans are, what the risks are, and what we're going to do about it.
Are you confident the next strikes will be more biting?
I'm not confident. I keep hearing from Kirby again that there's going to be more. At this point, I'm going to say the same thing I said at the outset when Russia first invaded Ukraine. Less is more sometimes. Stop telegraphing what we will and we will not do. Stop streamlining the adversary's calculations. They should know, perhaps they should know that there's more coming, but that's it. No more details. So at this point, I haven't seen a true pivot in the Biden administration's approach towards Iran. If I saw that, I would see sanctions again. I would see an incredibly different approach to the Iran regime. We have not seen that yet, so I suspect that we're not going to see the kinds of attacks that we need.
Obviously, Iran's front burner, but you made reference to Ukraine. What about the president coming out and talking about goals in Ukraine? Wouldn't that help on Capitol Hill with potentially more funding?
It would absolutely help. I mean, this is supposed to be, and it should be, one of the president's primary foreign policy objectives is to make sure that this far, 18 months, almost 2 years into this invasion, that the Iranians, the Ukrainians are right now rationing munitions. They're running out of munitions. And so the president himself should be there trying to negotiate what is necessary to get to yes for further aid in a supplemental passage to pass between the Republicans and Democrats in both chambers. He's been absent. And so you're left with a lot of people trying to get things like aid to Israel, aid to Ukraine, aid to Taiwan, border issues. And we really need strong leadership from this administration to say, What are the U.S. primary interests? What's at risk if we don't get to yes, especially on the Ukraine aid?
Rebeccah Heinrichs from the Hudson Institute, thank you so much for your time and your analysis today.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.